Are there different levels of hell and degrees of sin? This is a common question that comes up. Biblically, there seems to be definite teaching that there are different levels of hell, at least in the sense that there are various degrees of punishment. The Bible does not specifically mention higher or lower levels of hell in the location sense, but it does allude to degrees of punishment for sins. First of all, we see that there's more tolerance for certain sins. In Matthew chapter 10, verse 15, it says this, "Truly I say to you, it will be more tolerable for the land of Sodom and Gomorrah in the day of judgment than for that city." Also look at Matthew chapter 11, verses 23 through 24. It says, "And you, Capernaum, will not be exalted to heaven, will you? You will descend to Hades. For if the miracles had occurred in Sodom which occurred in you, it would have remained to this day. Nevertheless, I say to you that it is more tolerable for the land of Sodom in the day of judgment than for you." So again, it's more tolerable for Sodom than for Capernaum. Another verse that mentions this more tolerance for certain sins is in Luke chapter 10, verses 13 through 14. "Woe to you, Chorazin! Woe to you, Bethsaida! For if the miracles had been performed in Tyre and Sidon which occurred in you, they would have repented long ago, sitting in sackcloth and ashes. But it will be more tolerable for Tyre and Sidon in the judgment than for you." You could also look at Luke chapter 10, verses 7 through 12 in the context which mention other references where it's more tolerable. So the implications of these above three passages is that there's a greater punishment for rejecting Jesus than there is for even the most atrocious sins of the Old Testament. Secondly, the second main point I want to make is the Bible also speaks of greater punishment for certain actions. In Matthew chapter 23, verse 14, it says this, and Jesus is speaking. He says, "Woe to you, scribes and Pharisees, hypocrites, because you devour widows' houses, and for a pretense you make long prayers. Therefore you will receive greater condemnation." That's again in Matthew chapter 23, verse 14. You could also look at Mark chapter 12, verse 40, and Luke chapter 20, verse 47, which kind of reiterate the same basic theme. Another interesting passage is in Luke chapter 12, verses 47 through 48, which mentions this also greater punishment theme. And it says this, "And that slave who knew his master's will and did not get ready or act in accord with his will receive many lashes. But the one who did not know it and committed deeds worthy of a flogging will receive only a few. From everyone who has been given much, much will be required. And to him whom they had trusted much, of him they will ask all the more." This passage appears to indicate that the greater our knowledge, the greater our responsibility. Also, it indicates the greater our punishment is if we fail in our responsibility. That is in relationship to unbelievers. The third point and final point, which really reiterates the theme of greater sin, is found in John chapter 19, verse 11. And Jesus is speaking to the ones who betrayed him. He says this, "For this reason, he who delivered me to you has the greater sin." Jesus specifically attributes Judas's betrayal as a sin, as a greater sin, in fact, than that of Pontius Pilate's. So, are there different levels of hell or degrees of sin? There definitely are degrees of sin, and there definitely are degrees of punishment. Thank you.